Okay, what's going on, everybody? We are here. We are live. I want to thank you all for joining me today. If you haven't already, please make sure you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. If you're new to the channel, share this video out on your social media platforms. And please do not forget, most importantly, to follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group to help circumvent social media censorship and shadow banning. With the introduction out the way, let's get the stream started, right? And, I want to talk about something that we've discussed quite a few times before, but I don't think that this ever gets old, nor should we stop discussing it and unpacking these things. And it's the amount of money that these crooks in Congress are managing to pull in once they get into Congress, right? Prior to being in Congress, these people typically are broke, right? They're down on their last. They're not doing so well. They have businesses that are floundering and failing. And then they get into Congress, and all of a sudden, within the matter of a year, they become multimillionaires. As of right now, an actual official investigation has opened up into Ilhan Omar and her finances and possible connection to some of the fraud that's been going on in Minnesota, but specifically surrounding the fact that as little as a year ago, Ilhan Omar was net worth was around, I don't know, $51,000. And in 12 months later, she goes from a net worth of $51,000 to a net worth of $30 million. I think that that's something that's worthy of looking into when you're a public official, so we can find out what exactly is happening that would cause your finances to balloon that quickly. Because when you pry into it just a little bit, it seems as if there's a lot of fraud, foolishness, and nonsense going on. And what I find particularly interesting is that when you ask these people, when you confront them about their finances, those in Congress like Ayanna Pressley, they don't know how to act. They don't know how to respond. They get extremely and highly upset. And I want to play one of those clips, or two of them, for you right now. Check this out here of Ayanna Pressley just being asked a simple question concerning rental properties that she has. And she's trying to run out of here so fast that her assistant slams the door into Ayanna Presley's foot as she's getting into the car. I kid you not. Check this out here.
Did you make all this income from the rental property?
Sir, I submit a financial disclosure just like everybody else. There's nothing to see here. Thank you.
Is it appropriate for members to make so much money when they're in office? Should there be rules there? Financial disclosure reports.
I'm going to play the rest of it, but did you see that? They're trying to get out of here so fast that her assistant slammed the door on her foot. And Ayanna Pressley goes, oh, that's crazy. Why are you trying to run off so quickly? What are you hiding?
Appropriate for members to make so much money when they're in office? Should there be rules there? Financial disclosure report.
You know you're trying to get the heck out of Dodge when you trip, fall, stumble, and hurt yourself, or your assistant smashes your ankles in the door. All right, I'm going to stop interrupting. Let's just let the rest of this play. But you are guilty as sin, if you ask me. In my opinion, I think, I believe, I assume.
To make so much money when they're in office? Should there be rules there? Financial disclosure reports show that the wealth of Pressley and her husband Conan Harris swelled from $12,000 in 2019 to as much as $8 million. 5 rental properties earn them up to $350,000 annually. Pressley once advocated to suspend rent during the pandemic. She pushed policies for struggling homeowners.
These little to no cost bills help people remain housed.
Presley's husband is an ex-con who went from serving a decade in jail before they were married for drug trafficking to raking in up to $1 million a year as a business and management consultant.
Look, man, I'm not saying that you can't turn your life around because you can. But man, okay, so I didn't know Ayanna Pressley's husband was putting that work in. Okay, he was putting that work in. Can we hear that one more time? He's a convicted drug dealer turned multi-millionaire real estate, entrepreneur. Yeah, I find that interesting. Okay.
For drug trafficking is an ex-con who went from serving a decade.
Let me stop right here.
Little to no cost bills help people remain housed.
Presley's husband is an ex-con who went from serving a decade in jail before they were married for drug trafficking to raking in up to $1 million a year as a business and management consultant.
There are many times where we can see that the spouse is the person who may be bringing in the most income.
Some lawmakers resist restrictions on outside earnings. Do you think that there should be changes, some different rules about what members can make while they're in office?
These are presumably right-wing reports designed to try to undermine our members, and there's nothing credible that has been suggested that I've seen.
But other members worry about their colleagues cashing in on congressional service.
The idea that people's net worth balloons at that level is yet another erosion of public trust.
There was one of the first aphorisms I learned is politics is the art of turning influence into affluence.
Now, the money also followed Presley's fellow squad member Ilhan Omar to Congress. A House committee is probing how assets belonging to Omar's husband grew into the millions. Brett?
I just want to stick with Ayanna Presley for a moment. Her husband went from serving 10 years in prison because he was a drug dealer to being $1 million a year business consultant. How you do that? No degree, no nothing. He got a degree in selling drugs, and paid a 10-year tuition in prison for it. But you went from that to making $1 million a year as a business consultant once Ayanna Presley got into Congress. Okay. All right. That's interesting to me. And I want to play this other clip from her too, where once again, if everything is on the up and up, why are you so pressed when people are asking you basic questions about your finances as an elected public official? Look, she was asked recently about her finances, and just look at her response. Let's check this out here. And then we're going to move on to Ilhan Omar.
You're here today talking about affordability. What do you have to say to Americans who are concerned about the fact that you went into Congress with a negative net worth and now you're reportedly worth over $8 million? No comment?
I wish you people would stop reporting fake news. You don't know anything about me and my life. I was raised in a single-parent home. Every single thing my family and I have, we have earned. And you are reporting fake news.
Well,
and you should be asking, well, do your homework. That's how you get clarity.
What should I be asking?
You should do your homework, and that's how you get clarity, okay?
Asking you is doing the homework, dummy. What better way to do homework than to go straight to the source, which is you, someone who had a negative net worth prior to entering into Congress, but now all of a sudden you're worth $8 million with your drug dealer husband who served 10 years in jail for selling drugs and went from a 10-year prison sentence to coming out and being $1 million a year business consultant with no education on that other than being a drug dealer prior. Crazy work, man. I mean, I would be upset and running for my life too. I wouldn't want to answer any question either. And then saying silly stuff like, why don't you do your research? Why don't you do your research? Asking the source is the research. And when you ask them, this is how they respond. It's like maybe 10 more seconds left of this video. Let's see what else happens here. I'll rewind it back just a little bit.
You are reporting fake news.
Well,
and you should be asking, well, do your homework. That's how you get clarity.
What should I be asking?
You should do your homework, and that's how you get clarity, okay? That's how you get clarity. Do your homework.
You're knocking capitalism, but isn't that...
Thank you. You can take this card from me. Thank you. What was your name?
Allison, thank you so much.
No, how sweet. That was a nice little sweet little, interaction right there to end the video off. But imagine that, telling somebody to do your homework. The homework is asking you. Mind you, these are the same people that apparently are Democrat socialists. They're so against capitalism, but at the same time, they're making millions upon millions of dollars a year because of capitalism, but they're against it. Right? They want capitalism for themselves, but socialism for us. Right? They can make money hand over fist themselves, and they want soup lines and universal basic income for us. That's how this works, right? But now what I want to do next is let's shift on over to Ilhan Omar, because that's what I want to do. And while I'm shifting on over to Ilhan Omar, if you haven't already, please make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel, and hit the like button if you haven't already. Please make sure you hit that like button, okay? Let me pull this next clip up for you guys here from Ilhan Omar. Where is it? Here we go. So this clip here, is concerning James Comer and the House Ethics Committee taking on the investigation, or getting ready, not getting ready to, but officially investigating Ilhan Omar. He said something very interesting in this concerning Biden investigating Ilhan Omar in 2024 that I wasn't aware of. So I want to play this clip first, but then I want to get into an article afterwards that helps us dive a little bit deeper into what Biden was investigating, right? But first, let's get into this clip.
We've been informed in the last few hours that the Ethics Committee is probably going to have to be the committee that takes that investigation up. I'm disappointed to learn that. We thought that the Oversight Committee could do that. So we're going to be writing a letter in the morning referring this to the Ethics Committee. And it's basically, it's a simple investigation, Sean. There are two companies listed on Omar's husband's financial disclosure form. Both were worth, one was worth between $1,000 and $5,000, and then the very next year it was worth between $1 and $5 million. Another one was worth, I think, $25,000, and the next year was worth between $5 and $30 million, based on the ranges on the financial disclosure form. Either way, those are significant increases in value. And you know, we just have questions that any American would have. What type of businesses are these? That we know that the Department of Justice in the Biden administration was investigating Omar's husband for reports of fraud. We know there's a winery in question that has a big value on there that some believe isn't worth anything. So there are a lot of questions. This investigation shouldn't take long. She should just willingly come in, she and her husband, and answer these questions. It shouldn't take more than 15 minutes. But thus far, over the last 2 weeks, it's been crickets from Omar.
Of course it's been crickets. Of course it has been, right? Now, let's go into this here, because I find this interesting. I had no idea that the Biden's DOJ was actually investigating Ilhan Omar back in 2024, apparently because of her husband's dealings, right? There's a lot of foolishness surrounding her and her husband. Let me pull this article up for you guys right here. Check this out, and let's unpack this a little bit, because there's actually a lot going on over here. Look at this. Biden administration launched investigation into Ilhan Omar's finances and interactions with a foreign citizen. Let's dive into this article. So it reads this. Let me see if I can get this ad out the way. It's like really bothering me. I can't. It's going to trick me into opening up some other stupid thing. Okay. So here we go. The Biden administration, the Biden Justice Department launched an investigation into Representative Ilhan Omar's finances and her interactions with foreign citizens in 2024. The identity of the foreign citizen with whom Omar allegedly interacted is unknown. And the Times reported that the Biden administration's investigation, which was launched in June of 2024 by the U.S. Attorney's Office in Washington, D.C., has stalled due to lack of evidence. So it looks like they hit some sort of a brick wall in the middle of the investigation. Not that the investigation was dropped, but that it was merely stalled. Now, the article continues to read, but news of the investigation's existence comes after Washington Free Beacon report in September but news of the investigation's existence comes after a Washington Free Beacon report in September that found Omar's personal fortune had skyrocketed from no more than $51,000 at the end of 2023 to upwards of $30 million at the end of 2024. That extraordinary increase of at least 3,500% derived almost entirely from her husband's ownership stake in two companies, including his private equity firm, Rose Lake Capital, which boasts relationships with investment bankers and venture capital companies across the globe. Let's stop there for a minute. Rose Lake Capital. Let's unpack that for a second. So her husband's last name is Mynett, right? Or Mynett. I think it's Mynett, right? Mynett founded Rose Lake Capital in 2022 with his business partner, Will Haler. Okay. Haler a former senior advisor to the DNC. That's who Haler is. He's a former senior advisor to the DNC. So as you see, they keep it all in the DNC family. Not too many outsiders participate in this. Everybody is connected and part of the Democrat Party when it comes to stuff like this. Rose Lake Capital is Mynett and Haler's second private firm. Rose Lake Capital claims on its website that its management team managed a collective of $60 billion in assets under management. But the firm itself is not registered with the SEC, translation with the Securities and Exchange Commission, right? But check this out here. Let's go to the other business they have together. Their first venture capital business, EST Ventures, was sued by a pair of South Dakota cannabis companies and claimed Mynett and Haler diverted $1.7 million of a $3.5 million investment for purposes other than their stated business. And when you scroll down a little bit more over here, Omar's husband, once again, Mynett, entered the venture capital business after a lengthy stint serving as a consultant for Omar's campaign, during which Mynett and Omar divorced their respective spouses and married each other in 2020. The arrangement saw a $2.9 million, the arrangement saw $2.9 million from Omar's campaign flow into the coffers of Mynett's company, E Street Group, drawing intense scrutiny. So this is one of the biggest con games ever when it comes to these so-called consultant companies, as well as a lot of, so-called advertisement companies surrounding the campaigns of these politicians, right? Because what you'll often see is that these consultant companies and these advertisement companies are owned by their relatives, their husbands, brothers, sisters, aunt, uncles, grandma, and they're just funneling the money through these companies to do essentially nothing, but then it circles back around to their pocket. So when you see headlines like this, look at this. Ilhan Omar raised a record $1.1 million last quarter, just as Minnesota fraud scandal exploded. You know where that $1.1 million is going. She raised $1.1 million, and we all know that that's just going to circle right back around to her pocket. Okay? We understand this to be true. At least, excuse me, YouTube, in my opinion, I think, I believe, I assume. Just my opinion, right? Check this out. The controversial squad member from Minnesota ended the year with a record fundraising quarter, pocketing $1.1 million. Almost double the average of her previous 3 quarters. Newly released Federal Election Commission filings show. But now get this, because when it comes to George Soros and stuff like that, a lot of people like to pretend like it's conspiracy theory nonsense and George Soros is this like mythical figure that doesn't really exist. Well, that's clearly not true, because between October 1st and December 31st, she pulled in more than 10,000 donations. Of those, 8 people, all from out of state, and including far-left billionaire George Soros' son, Alexander, contributed the maximum of $7,000 to the Somali-born lawmaker, right? So money is coming from all over the place. And what's interesting as well is that when you read the headline, it states, she raised that $1.1 million in the last quarter of 2025, which was the most that she raised overall, if you combine the first 3 quarters. But that money really started coming in as the Minnesota fraud scandal exploded. For as horrible of a look as stuff like this is concerning the fraud scandal and things of that nature, right? The Somali fraud, yada, yada, yada. It's a gift and a curse. It's a curse from the standpoint of it being a PR nightmare for Democrats. Tim Walz had to, destroy his whole campaign, stop his whole campaign over it. He was running for a 3rd term, and now he's not running anymore. He dropped out. It's a PR nightmare for people like Ilhan Omar, but it's also a gift as well, because you can play victim and raise a whole lot of money. And that's what you see happen with Ilhan Omar here. She's able to play victim. She's able to say, oh my God, Trump is after me. He's racist. He's a bigot. You know, he doesn't like women. Give me money for my campaign. And now here we are with $1.1 million that we know, or at least in my opinion, is going to circle back around to her pocket by way of, you know, foolish, nonsensical advertising companies and so-called consulting firms that are owned by her husband, you know, and other family members, right? But now, as it pertains to her husband's, you know, venture capitalist companies, I want to play this clip here because there's a lot of funny business surrounding that. So check this clip out next. And as I pull this clip up for you, please make sure you hit that like button. And thank you very much.
Chad, thank you. And focus now. Kaylee McGee-White, a Fox News contributor. Look, there's a whole lot of money on Capitol Hill, both sides of the aisle. And you could say that you want to follow all the money trail. Look at the Shush Fund years ago, where women were being quieted for some of the discrimination that was going on the Hill. So we get that. This is a very specific case. Why is that?
Yeah, I was doing a bit of research into Tim Mynett, Ilhan Omar's husband's various businesses, and his investment firm. It has no known clients, no known investment deals. It doesn't even have an active SEC registration. And his winery, which is also purportedly making him millions of dollars per year, has no online presence. It has no marketable products available for purchase online. And get this, back in 2024, an investor into that winery actually sued Mynett and his business partners, alleging that they had fraudulently misrepresented the winery as a legitimate business operation. So yeah, maybe there's a version of events here in which, of course, all of this is conveniently timed with his wife's election to Congress and her growing considerable influence in the Democratic Party. And maybe there is a version of events in which Ilhan Omar and her husband have just been extremely fortunate. But in that case, you would think that Ilhan Omar might be a bit more appreciative for this country in the ways in which it's aided her success. But I look at these events and I think they have cracked the Hunter Biden playbook. And I think that there are many other people in Washington, D.C. who watched the success of the influence peddling scheme that the Biden family ran. And more importantly, they saw that the Biden family faced zero consequences for that scheme. And they decided to try and replicate the results themselves. So I do hope that James Comer is successful at cracking what is actually going on here, because I think that she's probably not the only one in Washington with some considerable wealth to answer for.
Look, that's exactly where I started. There's a whole lot of money on Capitol Hill. And
how in the world do you have a winery company that's apparently worth millions of dollars, but there's nothing for sale? Can somebody please tell me what's going on and how that's even possible? I don't know how that's possible, but you know, according to what she was saying here, right? The venture capitalist companies to the side, her husband also has a winery that's worth $1 million or so dollars, yet you can't buy any wine. There's nothing for sale, but it's worth a couple $1 million, or at least $1 million or $2 million. I just find that very interesting, and it's something that's very much so worth looking into. And it really just goes to show how corrupt these people are. Because once again, if you ask them directly, as many of them do, and like we explored earlier with Ayanna Pressley, they'll just get pissed off. They'll call you a conspiracy theorist, but they won't say that you're wrong. Do you notice that? They won't say that you're a liar and that what you're saying is not true. They won't say that your allegations are false. They just get mad and run off. Shout out to my man Jay Bird. I appreciate you, Jay Bird, for 46 months of service as a channel member. Thank you very much. I appreciate your support, holding it down, support me for 46 months. Thank you, bro. I want to go back to this now as we bring the stream to a close. I want to pivot back to the original article that we were just looking at, right? So let me pull that up for you guys right now. Look at this here. I want to take a moment to scroll back up for a second. A lot of colors on here. So you remember this part here, like where they're talking about interactions with a foreign citizen and all that kind of stuff, right? Ilhan Omar's interactions with a foreign citizen. What's that all about? You know, I want to try to explore a little bit more into what that's all about. And I want to take a moment to read this portion here once again as we bring this stream to a close. As for Omar's alleged interactions with a foreign citizen, investigators will have plenty of material to work with. Shortly after Mynett founded Rose Lake Capital in 2022 with his business partner, Will Haler, Omar formed the U.S. Africa Policy Working Group, where she leads 20 members of Congress, quote, committed to building partnership with the continent of Africa. Shout out to the motherland. Since then, Omar and Mynett have been pictured together at events hosted by the EBII Group, a company that helps facilitate international investments in Africa. Omar was the keynote speaker at the group's African Leaders and Partners Forum in 2023. Get this, where she called on Congress to approve a $44 billion lifeline for African communities. Meanwhile, Haler, as Rose Park's CEO, facilitated a panel at the forum discussing the challenges faced by international investors seeking to get their funds out of African countries. I want to focus in on this right here, right? That I have highlighted in blue. Might be hard to see amidst all the green, right? A lot of colors happening on the screen right now. But she was at this international investment kind of forum. She was, to be exact, she was a keynote speaker at the African Leaders and Partners Forum in 2023, where she called on Congress to approve a $44 billion lifeline to African communities. I want you to understand like the corruption that's happening here, you know, and how just wrong all this stuff is. Because when you see something like this, she called on Congress to approve a $44 billion lifeline to African communities. That, what she's doing there, along with the other 20 members of Congress that are a part of this U.S. Africa Policy Working Group, they're operating independently on their own. What do I mean by that? That $44 billion that she was asking for Congress to approve to send to Africa to do God knows what with it, obviously, as we all know, find some way back into their pockets. That's something that is independent from whatever Joe Biden had going on when he was in office. Like, this isn't something that's associated with developing and strengthening, you know, relationships with the African continent and with certain countries in Africa, things of that nature, like you'll often hear about, you know, when you're watching the news concerning international affairs. This has nothing to do with that when they're asking for something like this, that $44 billion. This is completely independent of that. And what often happens is that $44 billion will pass in a nonsense bill. Let's just say that ends up passing through Congress for sake of argument. We'll call it the federal law enforcement funding bill. You get what I'm saying? It'll be something like that. And then when you actually read the bill, you'll find some weird little provision in there that states $44 billion going towards the African continent. And you'll say, why? Why is there $44 billion? This is a federal law enforcement policing bill. Why is there $44 billion in this federal law enforcement policing bill going to the African continent? But that's how they steal the American American taxpayer dollar. It's through foolishness like this, right? Because rest assured, that $44 billion isn't coming from some independently raised funds. That $44 billion is coming from your pocket. It's coming from your tax dollars. And once again, they run these plays independent of the president. That money that they're trying to raise here has nothing to do with Biden when he was in office. It has nothing to do with even Trump while he's in office. When they try to run these plays, they're doing this on their own. And it has nothing to do with whatever foreign policy stuff that you may be hearing on the news. That's the issue with USAID and all the madness that went down with that. So much money is being stolen right from underneath our nose. It's ridiculous. Now, the real question is this somebody going to get held accountable? That's the real question here. Because unfortunately, for as corrupt in nature as, trying to siphon off $44 billion in taxpayer dollars to Africa is, as, morally wrong as it is, because we know what they're doing. They're stealing the money and trying to, divert it back into their pockets. They're not doing anything illegal, technically speaking, if it went through Congress. But when it comes to a lot of the foolishness that's going on concerning these fake consultant companies and these fake advertising companies, and you see how what happened with Ilhan Omar and her husband, all of a sudden, once they got married, $2.9 million, I think it was, of Ilhan Omar's campaign funds found its ways into the coffers of her husband's consulting firm. Things like that need to be thoroughly investigated for the corruption that it is. People need to be held accountable. And at a certain point, things like this just have to be illegal across the board. Will that happen? I don't know. I hope so. But in the meantime, we'll just have to keep reporting on it, exposing the truth, and hopefully at best, the truth can get these people voted out of office. And with all that being said, that does it for today's news. So I want to thank you guys for joining me today. Please hit the like button on your way out. Subscribe to the channel if you're new to the channel. Share this video on your social media platforms. And please do not forget to follow me on Telegram. That is so important. Please follow me on Telegram at TD Media Group. The link to my Telegram will be in the description box below and pinned in the comment section as well. Thank you all for your time. Until the next video, peace and have a great afternoon.